Mike Wilbon and Tony, a new app helps users find people on their flights who want to get busy in the airplane restroom. Too bad you're afraid to fly.
I'm Tony Kornheiser. Not anymore.
Yeah, you're afraid to fly. You have to take Xanax before hitting the button that sends the drink to 24C.
So are you suggesting that airlines are now in the business of
helping hookups, facilitating hookups?
Is that
Virgin? On Virgin, you don't need an app.
Virgin?
On Virgin,
on the aptly named Virgin,
you can just send a drink.
Really? That's bizarre. Shouldn't they be more concerned with flying the plane
the pilot's
safely?
Not helping facilitate.
How do you know that? He's
not
got
being.
the key to the bathroom. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. We will get to Bruno Mars, Syracuse and Duke, and Joe Namath's fur coat in a bit. But we begin today with the most obvious takeaway from yesterday's Super Bowl, how dominating Seattle's defense was. The final score was 43-8. That's a 35-point spread. That is a slaughter.
Beat down.
Denver was behind from the first snap of the game. Wilbon, was this game about the Seahawks being great or the Broncos being surprisingly lousy?
This is sort of like asking me whether the story of the day is about the Harlem Globetrotters or the Washington Generals. The Denver Broncos are just a prop. They were just out there. Because they have a famous member of that team, we pay more attention to them too much. The superior team won the game. No one, I didn't expect that. Richard Dent, she told us, was like the only guy I knew who said this is going to be a beatdown in Seattle's favor. Seattle was a great team. They just trumped. They did embarrass Denver in many, many ways, Tony. But I love the fact that defense prevailed. This was like old-time football for a league that wants to legislate defense out of the game. They didn't yesterday.
Well, I mean, I know that's your point all the time, that all the rules favor offense, and they do. But defense still wins championships.
They do.
It won it last year.
Yep.
It won it this year. I mean, there have been 16 times. This is a statistic worth quoting. 16 times the number one defense has walked into the Super Bowl, and they won 13 times. I didn't sense at any point yesterday that Denver could even score, let alone be competitive as the game wore on.
Because your phone call after 2-0 was game over. I'm like, can we wait a minute?
11-0 or 15-0, it was game over. 15-0 was game over. 22-0 was definitely game over.
Yes, of course.
Here,
by then.
I want to ask you about two plays, or point out something about two plays that I absolutely did not understand. Denver appeared to be utterly unprepared for Percy Harvin getting the first end around going to the left. I mean, do you think that this guy who could get a concussion at any time, that they're not going to put the ball in his hands? He's the fastest guy on their squad. Well, they were unprepared. To me, that is coaching. There's a second thing with 1:09 to go.
Why do you put that on the coaches? Why not on the players?
Unprepared. But you scope out that. You say, if he comes this way, here's what we do.
Okay.
He ran that play twice and gave big young chunks both times.
Yeah,
with 1:09 to go in the first half, you're down 22.
I know where you're going. Field goal.
It's 4th and 2. You don't
take
go.
The field goal. I'm with you.
So you walk into halftime, at least you know you have scored.
Something, and you feel better about yourself. Agreed, Tony. But I think I'm not going unprepared. What I'm going to is you can prepare all you want. But when the defense on the other side, there's only a couple of teams that hit and tackle like that in the league right now.
San Francisco and Seattle.
And Seattle and the teams in that division. You know, that's how they play, because if you're St. Louis or Arizona, you got to play with San Francisco and Seattle. You got to play that way, too. Tony, I don't think it was preparation. I think it was they got their butts kicked. Well, no, they knew what was coming, and they couldn't stop it.
You would see this happen. All year long, Denver would use quick screens, and they would go for 15 yards. They never gained 5 yards.
They were out there.
When the Denver receivers, who could not uncover from the
couldn't
DBs
separate.
at all,
couldn't separate.
when they got the ball, they didn't even turn upfield. They went sideways, and they got
that's preparation.
They got popped.
I think that's the players being unable to do what is asked of them.
Then we have seen, and maybe this is true, because the NFC was better than the AFC this year, and we thought all year long Seattle was the best team and probably San Francisco was second. We've seen an enormous disparity in Super Bowl teams. Enormous.
Like overnight. It just went from, this is going to be a close game to this is nothing.
Seattle was so much faster.
Okay.
So much faster.
We're obliged to talk about Peyton Manning's legacy. We're obliged, right?
Yes.
People who defend Manning no matter what point out that he completed a Super Bowl record 34 passes. People who roll their eyes at Manning no matter what point out his vaunted record-setting offense scored 8 points, and his playoff record is now 11-12. Tone, all things considered, where do you think this leaves Peyton Manning?
I want you to think of all the great quarterbacks in one room at a table, and there are place cards at the table.
Okay.
And we understand at the head of the table, in some order, there's going to be a Joe Montana place card, a Tom Brady place card. Yeah, people like that.
Bradshaw.
I think what happens in this case, by not winning this game, that somebody takes Peyton, he's still great. There aren't that many guys at the table, maybe 10 guys. They take his place card and they put it down towards, say, Dan Marino and Brett Favre. That's just a little bit away, not at the head of the table.
Marino's at the table.
Marino's at the table.
Not at the separate little
Marino's at the table for me.
I might debate that with you. But, Tony, Chris Carter said something I found to be the most succinct and accurate depiction of what this is. And he said that you can't remove an entry like this from your resume.
I can't.
And that's it.
No.
It's there.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was saying also, and I believe this, Peyton Manning is one of the all-time greats. And, of course, he's at the table.
Of course he is.
There's no question.
Of course he is.
But you can't remove it. I mean, I talked to people in an online chat today on ESPN.com who want to say, well, his line didn't block for him. And shut up.
No.
Peyton Manning had a bad game. His whole team had a bad game. And he's had a few more of these than you'd like to see from a great player.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look, he's a great, great quarterback. But if you're going to compete where they give championships out at the end, you got to be an all-time guy.
The championships mean something.
You got to win a few of these things.
Yeah.
You got to win, and that's the line of separation. He lost 43-8. Tom Brady has lost his last 2 Super Bowls, but when he left the field, his team was ahead. 43-8 is damnation on a lot of levels. Well, I will say this, though. When Peyton Manning was asked after the game, I saw this today, he was asked, do you find this embarrassing? Which I thought was a fair question.
He bristled.
He did bristle.
And that's rare for Peyton.
He bristled, and he said, I don't find it embarrassing. There are players who played great to get here, and if you use the word embarrassing, it's insulting. And you know what? When he said that, I agreed with him. But
here's what led me to disagree with that. His own teammates, including Champ Bailey, who's been, he's been great at his position for a long, long time. Hall of Famer, Champ Bailey.
Yes.
Champ Bailey said, without being given the word, he said, this is embarrassing. And so what? Champ Bailey's opinion of this game matters less than Peyton Manning's? I don't think it's an insult. I think you can ask a question. You can disagree with it.
It's all put on, because whenever they win, it's all given to Peyton Manning. Whenever they lose, it's all put on Peyton Manning. Okay, but then when you lose, you got to just say, what, we stunk it out. You can't run from it. I think what he said was they were great. Better to say they were great than we stunk it out. Here's my opinion on the legacy. True. I don't think he loses as much by losing as he stood to gain
by winning. He still is going to be seen as one of the great quarterbacks of all time. Does this entry help on his resume?
It's going to be very hard to now get to the head of the table. It's going to be hard. Let's step back and look at Seattle and their coach, Pete Carroll. Seattle is a young team, average age 26, 4th youngest Super Bowl winner ever. They've got a good young quarterback in Russell Wilson. The Pittsburgh Steelers were just as young when they won their first of 4 in 1974. Wilbon, can you see Pete Carroll presiding over a sustained run like the Steelers in the 70s and the Patriots in the aughts?
When you say Patriots in the aughts, I automatically go to 3 Super Bowl championships.
Yeah.
5 appearances. When you say the Steelers in the 70s.
4 out of 6.
4 out of 6 years and 4 out of 4.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm going to say no. And here's why. It's a different day and age. The Steelers were able to keep those teams together. Those teams had the core group together. What Belichick and Brady did is incredible to do it 5 times in that many years. But, Tony, I'm going to say no. Here's why. Seattle, I think they can have a sustained run of close to greatness. They're in a division where just the division alone, 2 injuries could take them back to 4th next year because the Niners are great. Arizona and St. Louis are coming.
Yep.
They got terrific coaches and great rosters and draft picks and resources. They're all trying. I don't see a run of Super Bowl championships. I see playoffs. I see maybe getting there, but it's going to be hard to do that.
I'm going to say this for Pete Carroll, because for reasons that are completely unknown to me, people knock Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll went to USC, took over a losing team, and won a championship and presented a tremendously glamorous team that everybody liked.
Close a couple other times, too.
That's right. Then he takes over a losing team in Seattle, and in a short order, he wins a Super Bowl. There was a survey last week that more people would rather play for him than play for any other coach in the league. So I think he can get free agents. I think the contracts, at least for next year, are beneficial.
Particularly Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman.
Seattle. But at some point, you're going to have to pay people money. And as you say, they're in a tough division. In terms of Belichick and Brady, Guys win young. Roethlisberger won a couple young. Eli Manning won a couple young.
Brady won young.
Brady sustained.
He sustained, but he started winning.
So we don't know about Russell Wilson. If he's Brady. And what you point out is correct, and I think the NFC is tougher now. But I think they could go, if you make the playoffs,
Tony,
3 years, you got a shot.
I think they could win 11, 12 games, between 10 and 13 games every year. But it doesn't mean you're going to be able to trump other great teams, and particularly when some of them are in your division.
That's right.
What a great division to watch the next few years. You know the most amazing stat from yesterday? Despite the incessant and moronic fretting over the Super Bowl having to be played in the polar climate that is greater New York, the game time temperature was 49 degrees. That's a spring evening in much of America. No snow, no sleet, no rain, except for halftime. Bruno Mars did fine in it. Not even wind. So, Mr. Cantori, you think this will lead to the NFL putting more of these games outside and with passes for elements?
Let me try and replicate something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the easiest question I've ever had.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Of course they will do this. Of course they will do this. This was an enormous success. It was the most viewed Super Bowl of all time. It is the most viewed television program in the history of the United States. The owners got to spend a bunch of days in New York City, which is the economic engine of the country. They are all businessmen. They had nothing but success here.
That's New York. You're going to tell me they're going to go to Green Bay next? Cleveland? Where you want to go? Because I know you don't want to see it in cold outside New York.
If you're asking me, I'm going to tell you exactly where they're going to go next. They're going to go to powerful cities such as Washington, D.C., and Boston. This is what they're going to do. You and I understand how lucky they got with the weather.
Boston?
They don't think they got lucky.
No, they don't.
They look around and they go, of course.
It's their own divine intervention.
And they will, not each year, but once every 4 or 5 years, they're going to try this again at least one time. Look, what are the powerful cities? Arizona is not powerful. Miami's not powerful.
I'd sure as hell rather be in Arizona than any place in the cold in January.
Los Angeles is powerful.
Well,
New York is powerful.
It's not cold.
Washington is powerful.
It's not going to be.
They're going to do it.
They're not
you know what?
Put it here.
They're going to do it because if owners want warmth, they get in a private plane and go on their own.
Owners don't want us. They can spend the week in New York because they can tend to their interests and they can stomach it. They're not going to spend it in any other cold weather city, and you and I both know that. Not even Boston.
They're going to
They're not going to go to Boston.
They're going to go to Washington.
They're not coming here for what?
Because it's the most powerful city in the country, and if it works here, they're going to go to Boston.
Party at your house?
Maybe they'll go to Chicago. Not those parties we went to with 5,000 people. No. And no wine? Really?
Party.
Let's take a break.
You didn't need any
Coming
wine.
up, Warren Sapp begs Michael Strahan for forgiveness.
Plus, our thoughts on Bruno Mars, Duke Syracuse, which we both watched.
Yes.
And Joe Namath's fur.
Look at that.
That is awesome.
Look at that.
Awesome. You don't need a fur in Los Angeles.
He didn't even need it at 49
No,
degrees. He had a T-shirt on.
50.
Time for the game that's weaker than one of those Peyton Manning ducks yesterday. Mailtime. Let me see what's
you taking
first.
shots at Peyton now. That's tough.
Just read what's out there for me. You ready?
Yeah, okay.
Are you surprised that Warren Sapp suddenly flip-flopped and apologized to Michael Strahan?
I don't know if I was surprised. I was glad. Because I thought that Warren, who I like tremendously, went too far. And clearly at some point, I think after a lot of people talked to him, I talked to people, football players, a couple of Hall of Famers this weekend, who I know said to him, Warren, really? I mean, we know there's beef. Well, there's beef when we're playing and we're competitive people, but you've gone too far. Whatever the case was, whether it was just within himself he figured this out or after talking to others, I'm glad Warren Sapp went this direction.
I was surprised that he did this because this has been going on for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that he groveled on the ground for Strahan to accept his apology. I suspect Strahan will look at him as an opportunist. We both like Sapp. We both like Strahan. And neither of us understood why Sapp had taken his position.
No.
Strahan is an obvious Hall of Famer.
If I'd been in that room, which I used to be, first ballot, Michael Strahan. And first ballot, Warren Sapp.
So good. Good if this works out.
Glad it happened this way. I don't know if I'm surprised.
Well, you're never surprised.
I thought he needed to do it.
Nothing ever surprises you.
No, because I'm prepared, like Peyton Manning. Not caught off guard like you.
Yeah.
Snap over your head.
43-8.
Broadway Joe almost blew the coin toss. Defend your furry, some would say overrated, not me, boy.
Let me tell you what I wrote down as I take notes during these games. And I wrote down, God bless Joe Namath when I saw him. Now, I will
coat,
say,
that's great.
the fur coat's a little girly in terms of color.
No, come on.
No, the color. But what this harkens back to for somebody like me that grew up in New York is the greatest Super Bowl hero in New York is Joe Namath.
Yeah.
And he wore, in the late 60s, he wore
real
long fur
dark beaver
coats.
Dark.
Yeah, not darker than this. And the fact that he tossed the coin to, I don't care.
I don't care. They should have let it go. It's Joe Namath.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see Joe Namath. I don't need to see any of the people in that circle other than Joe Namath.
Exactly.
I'm happy he wore fur. Although yesterday, it was so warm. Oh, wait a minute, Dr. Cantori, because you're so shocked the game should be played tonight on Monday because they were going to have to move it.
Snowing now.
Joe could have worn the bikini bottoms that he wore at the pool before that Super Bowl in Miami in 69.
The thing that Joe did wrong, of course, is that no one had called what they were going to call at that point.
Joe Namath. Yeah. Happy to see Joe Namath out there. I am.
Did Bruno Mars' performance elevate him into superstardom?
Look, I didn't know Bruno Mars' work before yesterday. I just didn't know his work. I love the way he looked, the way he sang, performed. The dancing was great. Some James Brown, backslid into Michael Jackson. It was spectacular. I loved it. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, I wanted to say, you people look like you should be on a Geico commercial. You look like cavemen. Yeah. You don't rate. You don't belong. Get the hell out of there. I didn't know Bruno Mars yesterday. I love him today.
This is so difficult for me and all the people who work at PTI.
Why?
Because for the last 3 years, the day after the Grammys, I've come to you and I've said the following thing. Did you see this guy, Bruno Mars?
What's my answer?
He's like James Brown.
What do I answer?
This guy is terrific.
And when you say that, what is... See, I have a job on Sundays for years. I go to basketball, NBA games.
Are you not listening to us?
I'm not watching the Grammys. I'm not like you. I don't sit at home with a little pen and pad and take notes at home.
And he was great.
Where are those notes?
And he was great.
Journalism Hall of Fame?
He was great.
Those notes?
Last one.
Bruno Mars was great. What about the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
They're not my kind of band.
They were naked. Get some style.
They weren't totally naked, but that's their move. They get naked.
Wait a minute. I have more Bruno Mars. That can't be the case. You took one of the cards.
Ask me about Syracuse and Duke. Ask me.
Syracuse and Duke played such a great game. How impressed were you, and who with more, Syracuse or Duke?
That was a great game. Absolutely great. It began to remind me in the last 7 and 8 minutes, the way they were making tough shots, began to remind me of Duke and Kentucky.
Don't get carried away. That was a regional final.
It began to remind me of that. If I'm forced to answer this question and pick a team, I would tell you that there were 4 or 5 times during the game when it looked like Syracuse was poised to pull ahead and really put some distance.
Back and forth was so great.
And then a timeout would be called, and Duke would come out, and Duke would narrow it to 2 points or no points.
Or tie it. Or tie the buzzer.
I know what I'm going to say is crazy.
What?
It seemed to me both teams won this game. It did.
What are you? You sound like a coach who just lost it. What are you talking about?
No, it sounds like
Syracuse was more impressive because Syracuse won a game. Duke is not into moral victories. Duke one of the 2 or 3 greatest programs in this country in the last 35 years. Stop.
Duke went on the road against an undefeated team.
Duke wins everywhere. Syracuse won this game. Syracuse is now number 1.
Yep.
Syracuse is still undefeated.
Yep.
And happily for me, in about 2.5 to 3 weeks, I think I'm going to be in the house for the rematch at Cameron Indoor. I want to see the rematch with Syracuse undefeated, still playing against Duke. Syracuse was the most impressive.
Let me know if Bruno Mars is there and you meet him. Enough email. Time for a break, but on the way, Andrew Bynum, your boy, joins the Pacers.
That's a good move. Plus, Tigers' tough start, and the Super Bowl's lame, overstated, overhyped commercial.
That's a great one. That was the Radio Shack one was the 80s call. They want their store back. That was the funniest of all the commercials.
Pardon the Interruption is presented by Guinness. More character, more taste, more flavor. Guinness, made of more. Please drink responsibly. Part of Happy Hour. And in part by Denny's. Welcome to America's Diner.
At the time, people happy 74th birthday, Fran Tarkenton. The original scrambling quarterback was 0-3 in Super Bowl games. But when you look at modern-day quarterbacks such as Robert Griffin, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, Johnny Manziel, it is Tarkenton who is their role model.
Tarkenton, vastly underrated, Tony. Should be in the discussion on great quarterbacks. By the way, Tarkenton, Jim Kelly, maybe Jim Plunkett, shouldn't they be at that table maybe even ahead of Dan Marino, just a little bit?
Not to me. Happy anniversary, Joe Flacco. On this day last year, you threw 3 touchdowns to lead the Ravens over the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Flacco's great playoff performances got him an enormous contract. As a result, the Ravens were at least partially broken up. Mike, this is the cautionary tale for teams like the Seahawks and 49ers, right?
Yes, just not right now, because your quarterbacks are young enough where they're not going to command that dollar figure just yet.
Happy trails to unemployment for Andrew Bynum. Bynum signed with the Pacers over the weekend. Frank Vogel says Bynum likely won't play until he's practiced extensively. But, Mike, did the Pacers do this to help themselves or just to prevent Miami from picking up Bynum?
Yes and yes. Why let Bynum get with Pat Riley and LeBron James and Eric Spoelstra and figure out some things and be available to play against you if you can snap him up? I think that's a great move. It says about Indiana, we want to win now. We'll do whatever necessary to win now.
Will we mess up reality?
Talking about Pete Carroll, he had his one title, you said, Tone, AP title. He has the BCS title. So maybe one-ish.
Oh, that's right.
That's fair. It was revoked, I think. Big finish.
Let's do it.
Tiger Woods has had his worst start to a season ever. You still think he'll win a major this year?
Yeah, I do. At least one major. I think so. Suns, Lakers reportedly discussing a trade that would send Pau Gasol to Phoenix. Would that make the Suns serious contenders?
How many years is Pau Gasol on the trading block?
How many years has he been in the league? Every year.
Tracy McGrady may pitch for the Sugarland Skeeters of the Independent League. Are you excited?
Jeff Van Gundy reports his former player T-Mac has hit 91 on the gun.
Wow.
Great. Which one of those dopey Super Bowl commercials did you like the best?
Radio Shack, the two Tim Tebows, the father helping the kid in the Hyundai, and Bob Dylan selling Chrysler. Last one, John Tortorella returns tonight from 15-day suspension. Think he'll be on his best behavior?
I heard he sounds contrite, Tony. I think he will be. We're out of time. He'll try to do better the next time.
Yeah, and I'm Tony Kornheiser. Who are you?
I'm Michael